Mr. Sir Sports. We recently hit 1,000 subscribers, so thank all you guys for that. If you want to join the family and be entered to win a MacBook Pro and experience all the NFL news that's important that you need to know, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you're notified when our videos go live. When we hit 10,000 subscribers, we're giving away a MacBook Pro, like I mentioned. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a video.
The New York Giants are currently this weekend taking on the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, this game is probably going to be a close one. We have two teams here that are not the greatest. I would say the Giants probably going to end up with the top 5 pick, and the Browns with Deshaun Watson don't look the greatest. Obviously, week 1, lose, week 2, win, but it's honestly going into week 3. I don't have really much confidence in either one of these teams. Currently, the Browns are favored by 6, but I don't even know. I think that's a little too much in my opinion. I think that the Browns, honestly, and Giants game is going to be really close just because both teams stink. Probably going to be pretty low scoring game just because both offenses aren't the greatest. I would say maybe they get it going. I would say the Browns defense is pretty good. So I think that this game honestly is going to be pretty low scoring, pretty close game. I know the Giants defense isn't the greatest, but I still think that Deshaun Watson is up and down. It feels like 1 week he's good, 1 week he's bad, and then you don't really know what you're going to get with him. And then obviously the guy that we love talking about, Daniel Jones, he's just the greatest quarterback ever. He's just going to light up the scoreboard. So yeah, I just don't think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. You look at the injuries. Giants, they just have Thibodeaux, who is limited, Isaiah Simmons, who is limited. That's pretty much it on that side. And then the Browns have a lot more injuries, which is, I think, the reason why this honestly stays closer is just because there's so many more injuries on the Browns side, even though they have a lot more talent. You have Myles Garrett, who didn't practice, Jerry Jeudy, who practiced in full but was on their injury report, David Njoku, who didn't practice, Zadarius Smith was limited, Denzel Ward was limited, a lot of big names on there. So looking at this game, who do you think ends up winning? I think it's a close game, but I still think that the Browns still win it, even though it's a close one. So what are your thoughts on this game?
I mean, obviously, two interesting teams. The Giants went 0-2. I mean, the craziest thing about the Giants last game was they scored, I think, 3 touchdowns and still lost the game. Lost to a team that kicked 7 field goals. And obviously, it doesn't help that their kicker Gano is out when you think about how they had to go for 2 so often and didn't get it. One bright side for the Giants, though, was Malik Neighbors, who I believe when we talked about the draft that I said it was a good pick. I stand by that. I think that he's an exceptional talent, and he showed it. I mean, crazy to think when you have a first-round receiver and you actually get him involved in the game plan, what happens. I mean, pretty crazy concept, but I agree with you. I think the Browns are going to win. I just think that their defense is better. When you look at guys like Myles Garrett, dog, Denzel Ward, dog, they just have so many guys around on the field that you can move around and be productive. On the offensive side, I mean, this is a QB matchup that's pretty crazy because Daniel Jones hasn't looked good, and then Deshaun Watson's Deshaun Watson. I mean, legit had a QBR of 10 the first game, had one of 42 last game. So who knows? Maybe he'll have one of like 70 this game. I have no idea. But he had a few plays. I think he had one of them to Jerry Jeudy where he scrambled in the pocket, scrambled away from pressure and threw it. Kind of looked like Houston Deshaun for a moment there. But maybe he plays a little bit better. But I think this game is probably going to be sloppy. It's a game in Cleveland after all. And I don't think this really is the most exciting matchup, but I'm going to agree with you. I think it's going to be the Browns who end up winning this game.
Yep, we agree there. So we're moving on to the next game, and that is the Chicago Bears versus the Indianapolis Colts. Colts 0-2, Bears 1-1 after their unbelievable comeback week 1, losing a closer one than people probably may have thought in week 2 versus the Texans. Colts coming off a tough loss to Malik Willis, who everyone criticized to be such a bad player, played a lot better against the Colts. So what are your thoughts about this game? We have The Bears, obviously, young quarterback coming in as a rookie, but then also on the other side, the Colts, they kind of have a rookie quarterback as well. No one's really talking about how Anthony Richardson's kind of a rookie. He's only played, 5 or 6 games so far in his career since he was injured last year. The Colts are favored by 1, so they're thinking that this is going to be a close one, flip of a coin. But if you look at it, I think going into this game, you just look at the Anthony Richardson. I think it's just going to run all over this team. I think the Bears are still the Bears. We obviously their defense has improved, but I just think that Anthony Richardson's going to have a bounce back week after a disappointing week last week, especially with Keenan Allen not practicing for the Bears. You have a bunch of injuries on their team. Rome Odunze is still limited. Montez Sweat's limited. A lot of injuries. So even if these guys play, it's going to be not at 100%, which isn't good. And then on the Colts side, really you have one injury, and that's Latu, I think is his name, their first round pick on the D line, who's a pretty good player. Everyone else pretty much healthy for them. So I think going into this game, you're looking at it. I think it's the Bears are going to lose this one all the way. The Colts are going to get the win, get back on track after losing to the Packers. So what are your thoughts on this game, and who do you think ends up coming up with the win?
Yeah, give me the Colts. I mean, I think they're going to get the win. I think it's interesting because even 2 years ago, like 2 drafts ago, I remember we were talking about QBs and if my memory's correct, when talking about Anthony Richardson, I said to me he's the guy who is very boomer bust because he's such a raw talent. He's such a great athlete. I mean, went to Florida. Cam Newton went to Florida for a minute before he transferred, and he's kind of got a little bit of Cam Newton in him where he's such a tremendous athlete and he runs the ball really well and scores a lot of rushing touchdowns, which we saw in his first few games he played last year before he ended up getting hurt. But now, obviously, last year we talked about how he needs to maybe not run as much, or maybe when he does run, slide so that you're not taking needless contact. Something that even I feel like we've mentioned even about Josh Allen, but with Anthony Richardson, I feel like he's going to elevate some of the guys on his team. Obviously, Pierce had that great reception against the Texans week 1 where Richardson just threw a 60-yard bomb to him. That was unbelievable. But also remember, the Colts still have Jonathan Taylor, and we really haven't seen Jonathan Taylor get involved in the pass game where we've seen running backs in recent memory. I know McCaffrey's hurt this year, but last year he was catching passes and playing well and doing all those things like that. So I just don't think Chicago offensively has it. Remember, Caleb Williams still hasn't thrown a touchdown pass yet. I think that could change this week, but as of right now, it's not looking good. I even saw a clip on Twitter. It was saying how cooked Caleb Williams is, that it was just a clip of his offensive line. I think it was his right tackle. Just got flat out beat. The pass rusher, like the guy didn't really seem to make an effort and just took Caleb Williams down. I mean, if anything's going to be the downfall of the Bears offensively, I think it's their offensive line. I think it's very bad. They're not doing a good job of protecting Williams, which, hey, they did a good job getting receivers, but at the end of the day, you still need to draft and develop O-line, especially so you can have not only your quarterback make more plays with more time in the pocket, but so they stay healthy. I mean, that's what happened with the Colts. They didn't do that when Andrew Luck was there. So, long story short, we both agree Colts are getting the win to go to 1-2.
Exactly. We're on the same page there. The next game on the slate is the Green Bay Packers going to Tennessee to face the Tennessee Titans. Titans favored by 3 going into this game with the questions of Jordan Love. Will he play? Will he not? That's the tough thing about predicting this game is you're just not sure what's going to happen there. Who's going to be starting at quarterback for the Packers. But if it is Malik Willis, obviously last week he did way better than people expected, throwing for over 100 yards, touchdown. They leaned on the run game. I think they ran it 54 times versus the Colts, which is unbelievable. They set a record, which was like the 3rd most rushing yards in a half in the past century, which is unbelievable. Josh Jacobs, heck of a game. Then you look at the Titans, and I feel like they have a really good roster on offense. It's just that Will Levis stinks. Like, he's just so bad. It's just not very good, not very clutch, making bad decisions week 1, throwing the ball, just giving the game away when they were up 17-0. And then last week, obviously losing to the Jets. Probably should have lost by more. The Jets kind of struggled a little bit in that game, but you look at the injuries going into this game. For the Packers, the main injuries really were Eldon Jenkins, who didn't participate, their left guard, um, Jordan Morgan, their backup right guard, he's been switching in and out. It's kind of weird how they do it, but switching in and out with their other right guard based on the drives, but he's didn't practice either. Jaden Reed didn't practice, but he didn't practice all week last week either, and he still played and had a heck of a game. So shouldn't really be worried about that. And then Jordan Love was limited as well. So we'll see if Jordan Love ends up going. Pretty much no injuries on the Titans side, with pretty much Spears and then Simmons were on the injury report and didn't participate. If Simmons is out, I feel like that's a huge injury for their line, just with the running game and the amount that the Packers are going to have to lean on the run possibly if they have to go with Malik Willis. So who you going with in this game? I'm still taking the Packers to win. I think last week, if you can beat the Colts, you can beat the Titans. It's even if Malik Willis is in there, it's a Malik Willis revenge game. He said to the media today, "Oh, I don't really care. Like, it's not our doesn't mean anything extra to me. They paid me the first few years of my career, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. He's so humble. He's a man of God. You know, all those people are very, very, very humble and don't really down anybody. So very even keeled guy is not going to bash anyone. So even though deep in his heart, we all know he wants to just say what he wants to say, he's very nice to the media. So what are your thoughts on this game? Do you think Malik Willis, if he starts, can get the win? Or do you think it's going to be the hometown Titans and Will Levis bounces back?
Yeah, well, my first thought was that it's the Malik Willis revenge game. I mean, I'm happy Malik Willis got the win last week. I still think that he was very bad when he played for the Titans. Let's not get that twisted. He wasn't very good. And I think even as bad as Will Levis has looked, I think what we saw from Will Levis last year really warranted that move being made. Now, Will Levis could still bounce back. I mean, it's early in the season, but I think even with Malik Willis playing, I'm going to have to go with Green Bay. I think they have a more complete team all around. I mean, not to mention that they're 1-0 with Jair Alexander as a captain. I mean, that in and of itself is amazing, especially if anyone knows what happened last year in Charlotte when he thought he was a captain because he was from Charlotte, North Carolina. Probably one of my favorite little stories in the NFL that not a lot of people know. But yeah, I just think the Packers have a more complete team. You know, even though Josh Jacobs, I think it says he's questionable or not sure if he's going to play, but you know, I think he's looked solid so far. Maybe not off to the best start, you know, from what he's known for, but I still think that the Green Bay just has a lot more talent. I mean, even though Calvin Ridley and Tennessee, some other guys got going like last week, like Calvin Ridley or other guys, Pollard's there, but I just think Green Bay going on the road, I think they're going to get their second win in a row against teams from the AFC South. I think a lot of people kind of had some high expectations for that division, especially when you look at the quarterbacks and how they're all very young. I think all of them, if I'm not mistaken, are either 25 and under, so they're very young. But at the same time, I think that Green Bay, I mean, if they have Jordan Love, they're going to win, I think, no doubt. But I think they still could win with Malik Willis, even though I think it really depends on how he plays personally.
No
And I
doubt.
think, yeah, but I just think that even if he plays, I think it'd be a good narrative to see him get the win against his old team.
Yep, no doubt. Like Max Kellerman likes to say, I think the Packers win, just like you said. The next game on the slate is the Philadelphia Eagles after a tough loss on Monday night to the Falcons, going and facing the red hot New Orleans Saints. I think going into this game, the first thing you really look at is really the fact that the Saints are at home, Philly's on the road. Philly just faced primetime Kirk Cousins at home and lost. And you're going to New Orleans, to one of the loudest stadiums in the league, going against Derek Carr and this red hot team. I think for the Saints, I think that we are, like you texted me the other day, we're a year late on the Saints. I think last year everyone had all these high hopes and they stunk. This year they came back and are playing really well. Um, AJ Brown still didn't participate in practice. That's a huge injury that obviously affected the Eagles offense last week, and that's going to affect them this week. Besides AJ Brown, they pretty much have no injuries. And then you look on the Saints side, even without Marshawn Lattimore last week, they still did amazing and won. He was limited today in practice. So was Tyrann Mathieu. And Rashid Shaheed was a full participation in practice after being listed on the injury report earlier in the week. And Taysom Hill didn't practice, but he hasn't really been that involved in this offense really at all this season so far. So if you look at just the injuries and overall, I think the Saints are favored by 2.5. I think they win this game at home. I think the Eagles are struggling, especially without AJ Brown. I think it's a tough game. I think going into the year, we probably would have thought the Eagles were going to win this game with ease, but I think it's the Saints just because they're red hot right now. So, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Saints, and I mean, kind of like what I did mention it. I whether it's year early, year late. I mean, I that was my first thought was when watching them against the Cowboys. I'm like, I think we were a year off on this team because last year I remember just hearing about, them getting Derek Carr and getting and all these guys coming into place. I'm like, oh, they're gonna have a good team. They should be top of that division, especially with the Bucks not knowing who the hell they had quarterback. Was it going to be Kyle Trask? Was it going to be Baker? We had no idea. There was those clips in training camp where they both looked terrible, and then obviously they were pretty mid. They weren't really that good, and then we see them this year, and oh my god, they're just explosive. Now, first week, remember that was Panthers. They're pretty bad, but then for them to blow the doors off the Cowboys in Jerry's world, it's like, whoa, they put the league on notice. Not to mention like Rashid Shaheed, like you said, full participant in practice. His name is so fun to say. I mean, what an electric name, but he's really providing that deep threat for that team. Obviously, they still have Olave, who's solid, and then Kamara, who really kind of burst onto the scene again with those touchdowns in Dallas. 4 of them was like, hey, don't forget about me. I'm still here. I still got it. And not to mention with him, he had that one touchdown against the Cowboys. It looked like he was jogging. It looked like he wasn't even really even running that fast, and he was just getting in the end zone. So I just think the Saints, I mean, especially when you saw the Eagles, how they blew the game against their divisional rival in Atlanta, I think the Saints are going to win this game. I mean, especially with how they've been playing. Hurts has been playing okay. I mean, he's had some mistakes. I mean, he had that pick at the end of the game that sealed it for Atlanta. Saquon obviously had the drop ball, which I think if you and I were to say Saquon, game on the line, does he catch a ball? We would say yes. Didn't happen. But even though I think the Eagles are still going to put up a fight, I think it's the Saints. I think they're going to keep rolling. And I mean, I think so far they've been a fun team to watch.
Yeah, exactly. The Saints are rolling right now, and the Eagles are not. So, especially with the Saints being at home, we agree the Saints are going to win. The next game is going to be the Chargers versus the Steelers. The first thing I think about going into this game is Justin Fields has won. He's understanding what it feels like to win, which is an unheard of concept for him, being in Chicago for all those years beforehand. Um, Honestly, I think going into this game as well, you look at the Chargers and their head coach, Jim Harbaugh. He's one of the funniest guys to listen to during his interviews during the week. It's absolutely hilarious just listening to everything he has to say, just because he's so funny. But J.K. Dobbins, I think, is a key part of this team that no one really talked about in the offseason. I think J.K. Dobbins has been unbelievable for this team. He's leading the league in rushing right now, and no one really expected that after he came off his Achilles. He was in that Achilles factory, as they call it, out in LA with Rodgers in last season. He's back and going. And the Chargers, you look at their injuries. Joey Bosa limited. Bud Dupree did not practice. Khalil Mack limited. Justin Herbert didn't practice. So that's a little concerning there. We'll have to keep an eye on if Justin Herbert plays. But if Justin Herbert does play, I think it's going to be a really close game. The Steelers are at home. I think that's going to be the difference in the game. I think the Steelers defense is really good. I think they turn over Herbert. I think even last week the Chargers struggled a little bit in the game. When you look at it, I think they struggled a little bit in the game just because um, in the game they should have scored a lot more points in the first quarter versus the Panthers, and I think that was a little concerning that they didn't blow them out quicker. They had to wait till the second quarter, second half, and I think the Steeler defense is going to be able to hold them, and they've been winning these close games. So as long as T.J. Watt, all those guys play on the defense, Russell Wilson can stay on the bench and Justin Fields can lead this team, I think they can get a win at home. I think that's the difference. I think if this game was in LA, I think the Chargers would win, but since Pittsburgh's at home, I'm going with Pittsburgh. So what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I was gonna say there was I think it was 2 years ago, there was a Sunday night football game in LA where it was an unreal game, and like you said, because of that reason, Chargers won. I don't know. I'm gonna go with the Steelers. I feel like something weird's gonna happen in this game where, kind of like what we saw. I mean, they're 2-0, which is very Mike Tomlin of them, but I just think their defense is gonna do something quirky where they're gonna turn over Herbert, or they're gonna, I mean, Quentin Johnson had 2 touchdowns. Yes, I get it. It was the Panthers, but I feel like they might do something weird where Quentin Johnson, like, it hits his hands, then, Minka or someone on their defense intercepts it and then returns it for either a touchdown or, let's say, good field position. But I mean, it is kind of crazy. Justin Fields is 2-0 so far. I feel like he really hasn't done much to help them. I mean, he didn't have a touchdown the first game against Atlanta. It was all field goals. Had one against Denver last game. But I mean, it is interesting. Even though Russell Wilson, even if he's healthy, I got to be honest, I think you roll with Justin Fields until he loses. And once Justin Fields loses, then you can be like, all right, let's go see what Russ has. But I think that because Russ has been hurt, it opened the door to Justin Fields. And it's still weird because I still watch him, and I still don't think that he would be a starting QB on a team that could win the Super Bowl. Kind of like, obviously, maybe I think it's part of the fact that he played in Chicago and the Bears just ruined quarterbacks. But I don't know what it is. I feel like it's kind of interesting and refreshing seeing him in an actual good organization that can have success. I don't know how much of it is Tomlin, how much of it is, other guys, even though I still think they have Matt Canada running the offense, which is probably why they have looked so bad on offense still, because it's Matt Canada. But yeah, I think so. Like I said, I think the defense is the strength of this team. So I'm gonna go with the Steelers, just like you did, and Steelers are gonna move to 3-0, which I feel like they haven't really started this well since that COVID year when they went 11-0 and then stunk down the stretch and then lost to the Browns.
Yep, exactly. I agree with you, and everything you said was valid points, and I think that the Steelers win that game. So we'll go to the next one. And the Giants, obviously we already talked about the Giants. Never mind. We're not talking about the Giants. We're talking about the Carolina Panthers and Las Vegas Raiders. First thing I think about in this game is really bad teams, and two really bad teams facing each other. Obviously, the big news: Carolina Panthers quarterback change. Bryce Young coming in now is being benched. I mean, for Andy Dalton, and the Raiders last week upsetting the Ravens. Nobody thought that was going to happen. Obviously, the Panthers have been struggling the entire season, and who knows if they'll bounce back with Andy Dalton. Maybe they'll light a spark underneath them in this game. But the Raiders obviously have talent with Devontae Adams. They just need Gardner Minshew to not make a mistake, turn the ball over, and I think they can win this game. If you look at the injuries in this game, when it comes to the Raiders and the Panthers, I can even find the injury report, is going to be the Panthers. Jadeveon Clowney didn't participate in practice. Doesn't help them with their defensive line. And a lot of no-name players who are also on the injury report that nobody cares about. But you look on the Raiders side, you have Max Crosby limited, probably just because he's a veteran, needs some rest. And that's about it. Christian Wilkins was also limited. So if those two guys are not playing, that's going to make a big difference in this game. And I think it's a lot closer I think the Raiders still win no matter what. But I think it's probably going to be a close game, even though it probably should be a blowout. The spread's 5.5 right now. It's probably going to be close game. I think the Panthers keep it close, but I think the Raiders win just because both these teams are pretty bad. So, what are your thoughts on this game? Who do you think ends up winning?
Yeah, this QB matchup stinks. I'm sorry. I mean, no disrespect to the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton has had a great career, but this matchup does not excite me in one bit. Both these teams, I know the Raiders are 1-1. I think the Raiders stink. I got to be honest. I think they're a bad football team. I love Antonio Pierce. I think he's a great coach, great personality. He embodies what that organization is about, what it means to be a Raider. I still think they're bad. They do not do it. They don't not move the needle for me. Gardner Minshew, I think he seems like a great guy. I mean, I like that he's, been able to bounce back, especially when last year he was with Steichen in Indy and played really well, almost got into the playoffs. But I mean, just like even thinking about it, even like Devontae Adams, I mean, like if he's not happy by let's say week 6, he's got to look for a trade out of there. I mean, it's pitiful. I do like Brock Bowers though, but even with Andy Dalton at QB for the Panthers, I don't think it changes a thing. I think they're still going to stink. They're still not good. They don't have the talent. They don't have the personnel on defense with, I think it was Derek Brown, I believe. He got injured. He's out for the year. When they traded Brian Burns, the Panthers are a joke. David Tepper's a joke of an owner. This matchup doesn't excite me. I'm going to go Raiders, especially because they're at home. They're in Las Vegas, and even when like checking the game notes and everything, and it says how low tickets are. If you pay $135 to sit in the nosebleed for this game, that's a joke. That's criminal. So this game doesn't excite me. I think even when this game's on Red Zone, I don't think it's going to be shown much because nothing's going to really happen. So I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna say the Raiders are going to win this game.
Yeah, well, you're not a big fan of either one of these teams, and it probably pains you to even pick the Raiders in this game. But yeah, obviously, I think the Raiders are going to win just because Carolina is so bad. They're one of the worst teams I think we've seen in recent memory. They were bad last year, and it seems like they're even worse this year. So then next game is going to be the Miami Dolphins versus the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are favored by 4 in this game. You look at Geno Smith being at home in this game. Honestly, Skylar Thompson's going to be starting for the Dolphins, which is not going to be good for them. I think just Seattle being at home alone, they would probably keep this game close. But without Tua, he's going to be out for 4 weeks. You look at the injuries. Teron Armstead didn't practice. Calais Campbell didn't practice. Grant Dubose, their number 4 receiver, was limited. Jeff Wilson, their backup running back, was limited. So was Raheem Mostert limited. A lot of injuries on that team. And you look at Seattle, they got a lot of injuries as well. So you got Kenneth Walker, who didn't practice. You have Leonard Williams, who didn't practice. You have Devin Weatherspoon, who was limited. You have DK Metcalf, who didn't practice. You had Tyler Lockett that didn't practice. So there's so many guys on both these teams that are injured. But I just think it's because Seattle's at home in this game. I really think that Seattle is going to win this game, even though that Mike McDaniel's calling the shots. I just don't have any confidence in Skylar Thompson. So who do you think wins this game?
Yeah, I think just on the simple fact that Tua is not playing for the Dolphins, I think it's got to be Seattle. I mean, obviously, I'm not really a big fan of Seattle. I don't like their team. I don't like their fan base. But I just think that because of who Miami doesn't have, I think it's a no-brainer. I think that Seattle's going to win this game. I trust Geno Smith way more than Skylar Thompson. Geno's led a team to the playoffs before. And I just think even if, Kenneth Walker and DK are questionable, they still have Smith and Najigba. They still have guys that can make plays on offense. Charbonnet's looked okay in absence of Walker. And I just think Seattle, even their defense, I think even like Witherspoon, who played at, like Devin Witherspoon played at, University of Illinois before coming over to Seattle. So I just think that it doesn't really matter who is playing quarterback for the Dolphins. Like, I don't think they're going to really be – Thompson's not going to be able to get the ball to Hill and Waddle very often. And I just think Seattle at home, the 12th man, I think that they're going to use that crowd to their advantage. They're going to win the game. I just think it's simple as that. I don't think that I think Miami, they're just dealing with too much, not having Tua. I would probably think about it differently if Tua was playing, but because he's not, I got to go with Seahawks.
Yeah, exactly. Tua's not playing. It's that simple. They're not going to win. You go to the next game, your 49ers are favored by 7 versus the Los Angeles Rams, who have been injured a lot, but the 49ers really are injured too, with Deebo Samuel not playing, with Christian McCaffrey out. Got a lot of injuries on both these sides. Hafunga, he's on the injury report, but he was a full participant in practice. And D Winters, no clue who that guy is, but he's always on the injury report every week. That's the only injuries for the 49ers. And then you go to the Rams, and pretty much the only main guy on there is Cooper Kupp, who's going to be out for a few weeks. So that's a big injury. They don't have either a number 1, number 2 wide receivers on their team. You have Matthew Stafford that's going to try to win it pretty much by himself. They're going to be at home, obviously, but these are both California teams. It's not really that far for the 49ers to travel. Even without Deebo, even without Christian McCaffrey, I still think the 49ers win this game. I just don't think that Matthew Stafford can do it on his own. The defense for the 49ers is just too good, even though they lost last week to the Vikings. I think they bounce back. I don't know how the Rams lose that bad to the Cardinals. People thought that game was going to be closer, but honestly, I think the 49ers bounce back in this game. It's a statement game, I think. And I think, honestly, they probably win by maybe 10 points in this game. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. Brock Purdy figures it out on offense. And I don't think with any weapons, I don't think they're going to be able to do anything versus that 49er defense. So what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the tough thing is, when the Niners went on that 3-game skid last year, the commonality was that Deebo was out those 3 games and they lost. Offense looked like trash. I mean, they still have Trent Williams, so I think that helps. He's healthy. But when we talked about, Deebo might not be the best player on that offense, he's arguably the most important player in that offense. And, despite him being out, despite McCaffrey being out, obviously other people on the IR, obviously Pearshaw after he got shot in camp, he's still out for a while, but I think the fact that they still have George Kittle in that offense, they still have Brandon Ayuk, they still have Juwan Jennings, who played amazing in the Super Bowl. They still have enough guys on offense that they can get it done, I think. And even Jordan Mason. I mean, look at Jordan Mason and what he did these last 2 games running the football. So I think that they're still going to win. I think that even the style they play on defense, I mean, I think Nick Bosa is going to eat this game. And when you said it's a home game for the Rams, I'm going to disagree. I feel like this is actually a Niner home game if you think about it, because it is going to be such a sea of red that everyone's going to say, is this a Rams home game or is this a Niner home game? I mean, they don't call it Levi South for no reason. I mean, that's like, even when they played in the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago, Rams fans were complaining. They're like, don't sell tickets to these Niner fans because they're going to take over the stadium. So I agree with you. I think the Niners are going to bounce back after this game, after their loss to Minnesota, and they're going to win, go to 2-1. Even though they would still be second in the division because of Seattle probably winning. I think it doesn't matter. I think that it's still a long season, and they're gonna figure
The
it out.
Detroit Lions are facing the Arizona Cardinals this week, and when I think about these two teams, I think about Kyler Murray finally finding Marvin Harrison Jr. last week. He only had 1 catch, I think, for 4 yards in week 1. Last week, absolutely destroyed the Rams. Kyler Murray and him hooked up on a ton of passes, helping me get this squeak out a win against you in fantasy. I will mention barely. Just got barely snuck by after your big Alvin Kamara game, but that's aside the point. Yeah, the Lions are a really good team, but so are the Cardinals. I think they're up and coming. If you look at this game and you look at the injuries between these 2 squads, you have Arnold for the Lions who was on the injury report, who did not participate in practice. Marcus Davenport, who is injured, was full participant. Kirby Joseph was limited. Amon-Ra St. Brown was on the injury report, but was full participant today. And then you look at the Cardinals, they got no injuries. They got none. They got Will Hernandez, hopefully not the brother or relative of Aaron, Dante Stills, and Xavier Weaver on the injury report. So not very many injuries for the Cardinals, and Cardinals are at home, which is, I think, this will be a really close game. I really do. The Lions are favored, like I said, by 3, but I think the Cardinals have a chance to win this game. And I think this is a statement game for them. I think that home crowd, them blowing out last week, the Rams, I think the only thing that really can get to them, I think, is really the game of the week and probably the hardest one to choose, in my opinion. But I think going into this game, the Lions have a lot of injuries. Cardinals are at home. I know the Lions lost last week. They're looking for a bounce back game, but they're going to have to travel across the whole country to face a team in the Cardinals who's on fire right now. So I'm going to say this is going to be the upset of the week, and I'm going to say the Cardinals are going to defeat the Lions at home. So what are your thoughts on this game, and who do you think wins?
Yeah, so I think this is going to be the first game that we disagree on. I think the Lions are going to win this game. I think when you look at both these teams, obviously the Cardinals blew the doors off the Rams. They finally used Marvin Harrison Jr., who, by the way, in the first quarter, he was putting up that Randy Moss Thanksgiving game stat line where he had, 4 catches, couple 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, guy was on fire from the moment the game started. But I just think the Lions, I know they have some injuries. I mean, some of these guys are questionable, like even like Terry Arnold, Joseph, all these Anzalone, solid players they have. But just because you're questionable now doesn't mean you're going to be out for the game. And I just think I think the Lions, the way they play football. I mean, listen, that game against Tampa, I didn't think they were going to lose to Tampa, especially since they played really well in the playoffs. I know that was earlier in the calendar year. That doesn't count. That doesn't mean anything anymore. But I just think that the way Dan Campbell, man, the way he coaches, just the brass balls he has on him, that I think he's gonna end up coaching a good game. I think he's gonna bounce back, and I think the Lions are gonna win. I think Jared Goff's gonna go out there and play a lot better than he did last time. I think it's a bounce back game for the Lions. David Montgomery and Gibbs are gonna run all over this defense, and I think let's expect a big game from Williams, and I think Amon-Ra is gonna bounce back. I don't think he's looked quite that good so far this season. I really don't. He for all that talk about some of those guys that he lists above him, rightfully so. I still, this might sound controversial. I still would take Ja'Marr Chase over him, even though Chase has not looked very good this season. Still would take Jalen Waddle over him, arguably Devontae Smith, but I just think that the Lions are going to go into Arizona and get a win, even against their former kicker Matt Prater.
Yeah, we disagree on that one, and that's the first one. But the last thing I'm going to say before we wrap it up on that video, on that topic, is pew pew pew. No one's gonna run through that defense when the head coach is throwing lightsabers out there, shooting down Montgomery and Amon-Ra St. Brown. But we'll see what happens on Sunday. The next game on the slate is another really good game, honestly. And it's going to be the Dallas Cowboys versus the Baltimore Ravens, 2 teams that honestly have really struggled lately. Obviously, the Cowboys coming off a tough loss. Obviously, tough loss in week 1. They're 1-1, and then you have the Baltimore Ravens, who are 0-2. They are really struggling, way more than the Cowboys are. The Cowboys are at home in this game, but the Cowboys have lost their last 2 home games. Obviously, the Cowboys won in week 1. I will correct myself there. They did not lose in week 1. They lost in week 2 to the Saints. Let's get that straight. But the Ravens, tough loss to the Raiders. Cowboys are at home. Cowboys don't win at home seemingly as of recently. They lost the Packers, lost to the Saints. I think they're going to lose to Baltimore at home in this game. Baltimore needs to bounce back. They're in a tough spot being 0-2, and they need a win bad, probably more than any team in the league. You look at the injuries for this game. Kyle Hamilton didn't practice, but I would expect him to play. And Calvin Noy didn't practice. You look at the injuries to the Cowboys. You have Trayvon Diggs, who didn't practice, Brandon Cooks, who was limited, Jake Ferguson, who didn't play last week, Malik Hooker. We have a lot of history with that guy, I'll tell you. The real ones know. Limited today in practice. CeeDee Lamb didn't practice. Zach Martin, limited. A lot of injuries. A lot of injuries with the Cowboys, way more than the Ravens. So I'm taking the Ravens in this game. How about you?
Yeah. I think the Cowboys, their losing streak goes to 3. I think the Ravens win this game. I think Lamar has an absolute game. I mean, I think he's gonna be very good passing the football. I think he's gonna run all over the Cowboys. And I just like with the Ravens. I think the Ravens are gonna have a great game plan from John Harbaugh. And I think that the Ravens, it's about time that they actually break through. They got hosed when likely his toe was on the line, like that Kevin Durant moment against Milwaukee where his toe was on the line and it wasn't a 3. That happened, and it was obviously would have, tied the game. And then I think in that case they probably would have went for 2 and not given the ball back to Mahomes in overtime. But that's in the past. You can't do anything about it now. So the spread is Ravens -1, Cowboys +1. So it's fairly even. I think it is going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout like what we saw with the Saints when they kicked the doors down on the Cowboys. Second game in a row at Jerry's World that the Cowboys gave up 40 points. Obviously, the last one was a playoff game against Packers. So I just think the Ravens, I think the game plan that they have, I mean, I'd like to think that they get down in the red zone, that not only they're handing it off to Derrick Henry, but we've seen Derrick Henry in Tennessee, Wildcat formation, get that snap and then throw a touchdown. He might do that this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. So I think the Cowboys obviously are struggling. I think they're a little too reliant on CD, and they're really heavily relying on Dak to do things that, I'm still gonna beat this drum all season. You can't pay an B+ quarterback A+ money. That's what they just did. And I'm not a believer in the Cowboys for many reasons, kind of like how Stephen A. Smith says, brutal fans. Not from Dallas. If you're a Cowboys fan in like New Jersey, brutal. But I just don't really believe in the Cowboys. I don't think they're going to win. I think Ravens are going to finally get a win this year.
Yep, we're on the same page there. The next game is the Kansas City Chiefs favored by 3.5 going to Atlanta. Obviously, their big win on Monday night versus the Eagles. It's going to be a great game on Sunday Night Football that you're going to be waiting all day for and be so excited for, like everyone. But I think a little more excited than most for this game. The Chiefs and the Falcons. It's going to be a close one. I think Kirk Cousins, primetime game again. Can he make it 2 in a row? 2 primetime victories in a row? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's going to be 2 in a row. I think the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and I think the Chiefs win. The Chiefs win on primetime. They win at 7 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock. If they played at 2 a.m., they'd probably win. The Chiefs just find a way to win. I don't know by how many. I don't know if it's going to be by 1 or if it's going to be by 10 or 30, but I think the Chiefs win this game. You look at the injuries for both teams, pretty much Chiefs' only guy is Xavier Worthy, who was full participation in practice, even though he was on the injury report. Pretty much everyone on their injury report, even backups that are listed, were full participations in practice. And then for the Falcons, they have Tyler Algier, who was limited, and that's pretty much it. So 2 healthy teams coming into Sunday night, and I think the Chiefs win it. I just think, obviously, their defense, I think, is just as good as the Falcons. On paper, you look at the big stars the Falcons have. You can say, oh, the Falcon defense is better, but I still think with Chris Jones, they're pretty elite. And then all the weapons, all the guys the Chiefs got. They just brought in Kareem Hunt. He's got an extra pep in his step at running back. He's going to come in this week if he plays and be pretty good. They're the only team currently right now since Kareem Hunt is still not on the team. Only team in the league right now with besides, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the only starting running back in the league besides Christian McCaffrey that is white and Steele, who is now their starting running back for the time being if Samaje Perine doesn't start. So that's very interesting. Shout out to the Caucasians. So who do you think wins this game? The Kansas City Chiefs or?
I think it's gonna be the Chiefs, but there's already a few things I know that's gonna happen with this game. One, I'm gonna be so pissed off at Chris Collinsworth watching this game. I mean, the glazing that is gonna happen because Patrick Mahomes is playing is gonna irritate me so much. Listen, I think Patrick Mahomes is a great player. I like watching him play football. Maybe not against the Niners in the Super Bowl because then I'm gonna hate his guts. But I think he's such a great player, and I love watching greatness. But him and Romo pissed me off so much. Remember last game when he goes, "Oh, that was such a great throw, intentional in the ground." It's like, Romo, what are you talking about? So that I also know that Mahomes is going to probably throw an INT this game that is going to be called back because of some BS on the Falcons defense. I know that's going to happen. But despite all that, I still think the Chiefs, like you said, they're inevitable. Mahomes is still Mahomes. Kelsey, I think, is going to have a couple big plays that they're then going to pan up to the crowd and Taylor Swift's going to be there. That's going to happen. Not saying I'm mad about that because they only show her, 30 seconds out of three hours. So I don't really care. I think it's cool when she's there. She's being a good girlfriend, supporting her boyfriend. He went to her shows over the summer. Rashee Rice is still playing. Like you said, Xavier Worthy. So the Chiefs are going to be fine. Like I said, I'm curious. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to do at running back since Pacheco is out for a couple weeks and doesn't look like Edwards-Helaire is playing either. So I'm curious to see how their run game is going to look. But honestly, when you have Mahomes, I don't think it really matters, to be honest. I think, and it doesn't really matter what Atlanta does. That's why that Atlanta win on Monday was so important because if they lost that game to the Eagles, I honestly don't. I think they would have started 0-5 because I think they're going to lose this game. I think they had the Saints coming up, and then they had someone else. I forget who else is coming up, but also was good. So that's the thing. But I think the Chiefs are going to win. But man, there's so many things about this game that are going to irritate me. Not just because of the Chiefs, but Chris Collinsworth and the Chiefs play is just terrible, and he's got to stop glazing Mahomes.